All right, good morning, guys. Welcome back to psychology. Sorry I'm not here again today. This should be one of the last days that I'm not here for this semester. Probably the last day, unless I get sick. What you are looking at is a picture of the brain with all of its parts that we are aware of highlighted. As we talked about last class, the human brain is something that we have only recently been able to look inside the alive and awake brain to figure out where exactly different functions are located. So some of them make sense, like your smell is located up within your nasal cavity, your hearing is back here by your ears. We talked about your occipital lobe back here in the back being vision, and your cerebellum being things like posture, balance, and coordination. Within your parietal lobe, there are two strips, and they're not different colors like it appears here. They're not separated by a line or something like that. But there are two strips called the motor strip and the sensory strip that actually coordinate to what you do. So, if your neck itches, then your sensory strip will light up to say, hey, your neck itches, and your motor strip will light up to go up and scratch it. So, that's how that thing kind of works. Motor is movement, and sensory is your feelings. All right. Remember, you're only going to write down the underlined stuff today, but the rest of it's just for fun and good information for you to have. So, brain age development. The newborn infant brain has approximately 200 billion neurons. 200 billion neurons is a ton of neurons. All of these neurons are free floating and flexible, which means they're not assigned specific tasks yet. They can be taught to do anything. They can learn anything that you want them to learn. They're all out there, 200 billion of them, just ready to learn. This explains why a young child can learn so much so fast. Remember, if I go too fast, just hit the space bar or hit pause, and it will pause it for you until you're done writing, and then you can go again. So as the child learns to talk and do various skills like walking and interacting with its environment, many of the neurons become assigned a specific function. So for example, if I learn how to kick a ball, then I repeatedly kick a ball, my neurons kind of get aligned, and those two neurons start saying, okay, we're the kick a ball neurons. Each neuron can make over 50,000 connections. You guys know I suck at math, but this number kind of makes my head want to explode because they have 200 billion neurons that can each make 50,000 different connections. I did the math last night when I was at bowling, and it's called 10 quadrillion. That's the number of connections that a brain can learn as a child. So a baby can learn 10 quadrillion different things, all without even struggling to learn them. So, kind of crazy. The abundance of unattached neurons explain why young children can learn so much and so many complex things in such a short period of time. And in the early years, the neuron pathways are called soft-wired and are easily changed or redirected. Soft-wired means they're not permanent thoughts yet. So, like when the little kid has a dog and he says doggy, 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 and then he looks at a cat and says doggy, and then somebody says no, that's a cat, his neuro pathways actually shift just a little bit, and that's something that's been learned. It's a change. It's really easy for them to learn that. Okay, that's it. Child development. New research about the developing brain gives parents some very important information about the way they should raise their kids. There are certain skills that children can be taught to create key neural pathways that allow other pathways to branch off. So, for example, if you built a business and there were no roads to get to it, nobody would come to your business. But if you built a road, businesses will come to the road, especially if it has good access and lots of traffic on that road. So, if you can teach your kid within the first 3 to 4 years of life how to do things like speak a foreign language, play a musical instrument, get involved in art, singing, dance, gymnastics, or even appreciation for classical music, that's like building them a highway. So you're putting a highway in their brain, and then all of these other neural pathways are going to come and branch off of it. All these other little roads, all these little businesses are going to come and set up shop there, all because the highway was there first. So if any of you learned any of those skills, probably by the age of 5, then you have some neural pathways in your brain that some of your classmates do not have. Doesn't mean you're smarter than them, just means you have a little bit more highway going on in your brain. The teenage brain. This is you guys. Around the age of 12 to 14, the brain begins to lose any unattached neurons. It's the whole idea of if you don't use it, you lose it. Your brain decides by the time you're 14, if I've never used this neuron, if it's been free floating and never picked up any information in the whole 14 years that I've been alive, I probably don't need it anymore. And so it starts to die off. By the end of your teenage years, the brain will have around 130 billion neurons left. So just by growing older, you've lost 70 billion neurons from the time you were born. And the wiring of their neuron pathway starts to become more hardwired and more permanent, which is why it's a little bit more difficult for you to learn new skills the older you get. Doesn't mean you can't, it just means it's more challenging. For example, if you played soccer when you were 3 years old and you kicked the ball with your toe every single time, and then you didn't try out for the soccer team again until you were in high school, and you got to high school and your coach said, hey, you know what? You need to kick the ball with the inside of your foot instead of the toe of your foot. You would practice it and you'd get it in your head, and every once in a while you'd still kick it with your toe and you'd be mad at yourself about it, and you'd go back and say, I got to kick it with the inside of my foot. That's just because it's a little bit more hardwired for you. It wasn't an instant change, otherwise that would have been soft wired. So the more hardwired your brain comes, the more permanent those skills become. Also, poor decisions with your lifestyle choice, like using drugs, alcohol, and choice of profession, and smoking, might not appear to have an immediate negative impact on the brain because you guys have an overabundance of extra neurons, but the damage over a lifetime is accumulative. I'm sure most of you have seen that person that's not too old to have their life together. They're not too old to be forgetful and stuff like that, and yet they can hardly function. Chances are that in their life they've made some poor lifestyle choices. Maybe they've had a rough go of things, car accident or something like that, but chances are they were making bad choices. The adult brain. By the mid to late 30s, most adults stop the production of new neurons, which means if you don't have them, you're not going to get new ones. And the ones that you have to last you the rest of your life. By the age of 40, most adults have fewer than 100 billion neurons left. So it becomes more and more difficult to learn new skills. New neural pathways have to work around all the existing connections, and damaged and scarred neurons make the brain work slower and slower. Think about where you're sitting in the room. If everybody between you and whoever's sitting furthest away from you in the room, so just kind of look around, whoever's sitting furthest away from you, if everybody between you and that person had their arms out and up, and you and the person that's furthest away from you had to touch hands, how difficult that would be, not only because of distance, but also because of all of the traffic between you two. That's like the adult brain. They have to find a way to reach each other through all of the traffic of all the stuff they've already learned. So, you've probably heard the term before, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Maybe we should change the term to, it's hard to teach your parents a new phone. And have you taught your parents how to use a cell phone before? It's a challenging thing. They struggle with it. It's not their fault. You need to be patient with them. They literally don't know how to do it, and it's more difficult for them to learn how to do it. My dad recently transitioned from the flip phone to the iPhone 5S. That was an interesting moment for us and our family. He sent me a text message the other day. It was completely blank. There's nothing on it. So I write him back, hey, what's up? And he says, did I text you? I said, yeah. He said, can you just call me? Because he's not quite sure how to do things yet. So we're working on it. But anyways, the adult brain, you need to be patient with your parents because it takes them longer to learn things. Also, if they lack exercise and a proper diet, it diminishes the amounts of key chemicals in their brain, and any lifestyle choices they might have made are starting to cause residual damage at this point. And the damaged neurons are more susceptible to disease like dementia and Alzheimer's. Alright, this is a long one, so you're definitely going to have to hit pause on this one. Self-inflicted brain damage, like lifestyle choices like poor diet, lack of proper exercise, smoking, dangerous occupations and recreational activities, alcohol abuse, and drug use can all cause damage. By the age of 50, most people have less than 80 billion neurons still operating. So, if any of you have parents that are around the age of 50, you have almost twice as many billions of neurons as they do. And many of the neurons that they do have are worn out and operating at a diminished level. What you don't know is that neurons live for about 30 years at a time. So, if you stopped producing neurons by the time you were 35, those neurons have to last you the rest of your life. These used neurons need to last the rest of the lifespan, and this is why older people have trouble remembering, concentrating, and sometimes working through mental activities. Again, be patient with your parents and with your grandparents. The elderly brain. After the age of 60, the brain is operating at a diminished capacity. Medications, poor diet, lack of exercise, and the lack of quality sleep cause a disruption in normal brain functions. The body stops producing less of certain brain chemicals like serotonin, and the diet of many elderly people lead them to deficiencies of essential vitamins and chemicals. Some of you might know old people that want to eat the exact same thing every single day. They have the same meal for breakfast or the same meal for lunch. My grandma was like that. Even before her Alzheimer's kicked in, she would have like a piece of fruit and some cottage cheese for breakfast. She would make herself a salad for lunch, and then she'd have a nice meal for dinner with the family. But that was what she ate. When she got pretty bad in Alzheimer's, somehow she got into her head that she needed to lose weight, even though she's always been a very thin woman. And she started having a slim fast for breakfast, a slim fast for lunch, and then eating a dinner. Well, her Alzheimer's started going downhill much faster than it should have. It was getting out of control, really, how fast she was losing brain function. And so when my mom and my grandpa took her to the hospital and they started talking with the nutritionist about things, he figured out that that was what was making her get so bad so fast was her diet. And so he told her she had to eat real meals and gave her a diet to eat on and stuff like that. My grandma was unhappy because she was like, the doctor wants me to gain weight. And anyways, the end result was once we changed her diet, her brain bounced back. She was like 1990s Mama again. She knew everything. She was all over it. She was just rocking and rolling all the time. So diet really does affect people, especially the older you get, the more it starts to affect you. Also, illnesses, constant depression, and emotional stress impact the quality of brain functions. As you know, elderly people get old, they pass away, all of their friends are passing away. It's sad, it's a tough place to be in, and they can get sick really, really easily. Recent studies have shown that elderly people can reduce some of the deterioration in their brain and even stave off, which means hold off, things like Alzheimer's and other aging diseases like senile dementia, if they will exercise their bodies and their brains. The best way to do this is to learn new skills. You need to spend time with your grandparents if you have that opportunity. Get a puzzle out. Do a puzzle with them. Play cards with them. Make them play something like Rummikub where they have to think about the moves that are coming up. It's hard for them. Let them take their time, but it's going to be good for them. Now, I know my grandma has Alzheimer's and she's probably much more mentally deficient than a lot of your grandparents at this point. But last year for Christmas, I got her a workbook for 7-year-olds, and it was hard for her. It was, word searches and stuff like that. It was challenging for her to do, but she did it and she loved it because it was hard and it made her brain think. Now, one way that you guys can actually, you and your parents could actually start right now fighting Alzheimer's and dementia would be to take a daily activity like brushing your teeth, and instead of doing it with your dominant hand, I want you to do it with your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, you're going to do it with your left. Left, you're going to do it with your right. I tried that this morning, and I felt mentally challenged a little bit about how I was doing it. So I want you to try it for the rest of the week, and tell your parents to try it too. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Brush your hair with your non-dominant hand. You'll still get clean. It'll still be fine. But try it. It's hard, and it starts creating new neural pathways. You're working out your brain. It's an important thing to try. All right, this is just some information for you, random stuff. The neuron, which we've been talking about, you might not know what that is an electrical chemical cell that allows the brain to communicate with the rest of the body, and each neuron can have as many as 50,000 connections to other neurons, and the average brain has over 1 trillion neuron connections. Most neurotransmitters are made of amino acids, which come from proteins and fats. Okay, moving on. Neurons do not actually touch each other. Messages pass between them by chemical discharge across the synapse. Over 300 neurotransmitters have been identified. A neuron impulse sent from your brain to your fingertips travels at 200 miles per hour. So think about that. If I put my hand on the hot stove, instantly my nerves send the message up to my brain through my thalamus. And then my brain sends the message back down through my pons and says, move your hand. And it all happens so fast that you basically put your hand down and pick it back up because you realized it was hot. It's traveling 200 miles per hour and it's only going 3 feet from your fingertips to your brain and back. So that's pretty incredible speed. This is the typical structure of a neuron. If you will kind of stick your hand out in front of you and spread out your fingertips, that's what your neuron looks like. Okay, so your dendrite is out there at your fingertips, your axon is where your wrist is, your myelin sheath is your arm, and you're headed back towards your axon terminal, which would be your chest. So that's the typical structure of a neuron, and that's what I want you to picture when we're talking about neurons. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals that carry messages between the neurons. Specific amounts of the chemicals are released by each neuron when it's fired. These relay chemicals carry messages across the synapse and direct other neurons to fire and pass on the message. They amplify the electrical signals and direct action of the other neurons. So this is what it looks like when they kind of send out a message. This is serotonin going to the receptors. So they push out the chemicals, they receive the chemicals, and then they send a message back to say, okay, we got it. All right. The 3 most important fuels for your brain are water, oxygen, and nutritious foods. Water acts as a transport system for the brain. It delivers nutrients and dilutes toxins. Most people are operating at a state of partial dehydration, so proper amounts of water are essential for concentration and mental alertness. If you had to guess how much water you were supposed to have in a day, I would guess most of you don't know the answer to that. You should, if you have a minimal level of activity, you should be getting 64 ounces of water a day, which is 8 8-ounce glasses. If you are an athlete or work outside or stuff like that, very active people, you need to have more water because you're sweating more out. Oxygen is super important. You guys know that. A disruption in oxygen to your brain can cause brain damage very, very quickly. Your brain requires 20% of all of the oxygen used by the body. Proper exercise helps develop blood vessels in the brain, so that also helps you there. Oh, also, after you eat a big meal, your blood starts to go to your stomach, which takes your oxygen down to your stomach, and it's why you feel mentally tired after a big meal. And proper nutrition is absolutely necessary for the brain to work properly. The brain is made up of mostly proteins and fats, and most of the neurotransmitters used by the brain are made up of amino acids. So people in a deprived living situation where they don't have access to protein-rich foods will experience a severely reduced brain function. Also, elderly people frequently need to supplement their diets, and vegetarians and vegans need to seek out alternative sources for protein and fats if they won't eat meat. There's good fats and there's bad fats, so they have to make choices about how to get that stuff in so that their brain can stay high functioning. Sleep is probably one thing that you would have thought should have been on the list of the top 3 things for your brain. It's definitely number 4. The brain also needs proper sleep to operate at its most efficient level. The elderly people often experience sleep-related problems. After the age of 50, the brain produces less serotonin and contributes to sleep difficulties. Proper sleep allows the brain to rejuvenate and prepare for the activities of the next day, and sleep prepares and balances the chemicals in the brain. Sleep deprivation can cause weight loss, weight gain, confusion, loss of memory, and in extreme cases, hallucinations and mental breakdowns. So sleep is super important too. Also, the chemical melatonin can help you sleep. You can get pills for that. It's not like an addictive pill. It's just a chemical. And also, you could drink a glass of Bing cherry juice every single night before bed, and it would help you go to sleep. All right. What you're going to do now is jump on Kia, QUIA.com/web. Log on with your first name, last name, 853. Password is password. You're going to play 8 minutes on parts of the brain and 8 minutes on functions of the brain. When you're done, and there's about 10 minutes left in class, your sub will have you watch a video through the end of the block. So thanks. Hope you had a great day. Talk to you later.